Hi, I'm John J. Murphy, and I welcome you to the Change Mastery Show with my co-host, Dr. Pat. Together, we invite you to think differently about change, not as something to fear or resist, but as a powerful opportunity for growth, empowerment, joy, and life mastery. My vision? To help millions of people shift from victimhood to leadership, from ego to spirit, and from hesitation and resistance to flow. This is an opportunity for you to get out of your own way and experience life with more courage, confidence, humility, and higher purpose. Get ready. The Change Mastery Show starts now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Pat, and I get to take this amazing ride with the most incredible, as you just heard a few seconds ago, John J. Murphy. Today's episode is super cool. Why? Because I think in our lives, there are things that show up. And so when we think about the things that show up, how do they show up for you? And are you aware of choice and consequence? Are you aware of that? Outside of watching The Matrix, where you hear that phrase a lot, in our day-to-day lives, what if you could understand karmic law? John, you're going to take us a journey on this, and certainly many of us have had a taste of things like this, especially when things go kind of strange. It's a great topic. I mean, you teach this. You teach this in your change mastery workshops. You teach this. And yet at the same time, it's this idea of working backwards to help us understand the journey, right? Did I get that right for what you do?
Yeah, sure. Well, and it's not just a tool and a law for us to understand personally, but I'm a business consultant, and I
Yes.
I teach it somewhat subtly, if you will, in the corporate world. Because if you think about consequence in a business setting, it's things like customer experience. What's the customer experiencing? Uh, what's the shareholder experiencing? What are the employees experiencing? And so, working backwards, to use your words, um, we start with the end, if you will, the customer, for example, or in our
Mhm.
case, we start with the consequences or experiences we're having in life, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, socially, the relationships we're in. And working backwards, if there's anything that's not ideal, why not? So we need to find out what the choices are, what the inputs are leading to those outputs. So whether it's in business and you're running a major corporation and you've got customer issues, you've got quality issues, you've got financial struggles, or if you're an individual and you have quality of life issues, relationship issues, financial issues, health
Mm.
issues, physical, mental, emotional health issues, you got a lot of stress in your life. Those are consequences. And there's a reason for those. And so knowledge is the is understanding the relationship between inputs and outputs, between cause and effect
Mm.
or cause and consequence. That's where knowledge means. I use the transfer function, something we all probably learned in seventh or eighth grade algebra. Y is a function of X. Now, when you're back in seventh or eighth grade and you're learning Y is a function of X, you go, what does that have to do with anything? And Murphy comes along and says it has everything to do with everything, because karmic law is that everything is cyclical. And if you think about it, how long did humankind think the world was flat? We've all been trained linearly, A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. We write sentences linearly. We age. So how old are you? We're looking at a linear sequence, if you will. So our minds are trained to think that way, linearly. When in fact, universal law and spiritual law, karmic law teaches us that everything is actually cyclical. What goes
Mm.
around comes around. Okay? All debts get paid. That's karmic law. If you look at the universe, you look at the planets, we're round. We're not flat, we're not square. We're round, and we're circling. The Earth's spinning. All right. And, day is becoming night, back to day again. We're circling the sun. All right. The moon is circling us. That everything is moving in a cyclical way. And so a major paradigm shift for people is to learn to think that way. Like we existed, our higher self, before we manifested, if you will, before we incarnated into a body. And we don't die when the body dies. We move on. And so it's eternal, all right? But most of us aren't programmed that way. We think, we're born and we live as long as we do, and then we die, and that's it. A, B, C, D. So understanding karmic law, Dr. Pat, is critically important because at the end of the day, we start to realize I am responsible for my consequences.
Yeah.
And if I don't believe that, I take on a victim consciousness. Oh, poor me. I had this problem when I was a kid, or my parents weren't, good parents, or the school messed me up, or I got into trouble and I never got out of it. And we go through this dark period of life that we never come out of until we change our mind, which is probably it's not probably, it's the
It
most
is.
critical input leading to our outputs. It's mindset.
Yeah. I love this because can you imagine if somebody didn't have the curiosity to say, I don't think the world's flat. I mean, it would have been this ongoing mindset that kept people in a place that just went round and round and round with a paradigm that didn't explore for another idea. But your point about the planets being round, I actually hadn't thought about that, John. It's like, have they, what, who did that? Right? It's like,
Yeah.
it had to be somebody really smart. But don't you also think, too, that part of this is to enable us, if we can do what you're about to talk about today, there's nothing we can't learn.
Yeah. I
I don't
think that
believe that. I believe that.
once we realize that we can control the mind rather than the mind controlling us, most
Yeah,
people don't
boy.
know the difference. So they think, well, I'm afraid because, of course, I'm afraid that there's something scary. No, you're afraid because you choose to be. You choose to be afraid. What do you mean I choose to be afraid? No, no, I'm afraid because of something out there. No, you're afraid of because of what you think of something out there.
Hmm.
It's in your mind. And what you're doing is you're projecting there's something ha bad that's going to happen, and that's triggering your body and your hormones and all that. And your cortisol levels are shooting up, your adrenaline, your fight or flight, your amygdala is going, yo. And so you think it's real. But if you really get into the mindfulness of it, it feels real because you think that way. And your mind is trying to control you. The mind is the ego. So when you stop and you really examine that and you think about when somebody says, I changed my mind, who actually said that? Who's the I? And the I is our true self, our capital S, eternal self, challenging the body and the brain and the human, our humanity, to say, who's in charge here? And most of us have been trained to feel like victims, that the mind is controlling us and we have no control over it. And the biggest challenge I have for people is to first of all take ownership and take responsibility for that, because you have the power to change your mind and not believe what everybody else does. We talked about the round planets and all of that. I believe it was Galileo who first, put that out there, and then he ended up going to prison for it.
Yeah.
You know, uh, I was at his tomb many years ago in Florence, Italy, and just standing there at Galileo's tomb and reading the story. I don't remember the details very well, but it was like, here's a guy that comes out and says, I'm going to challenge what everybody else thinks here, and gets imprisoned for it. And that's how that's how strong
Yeah.
sometimes the culture is, the environment we're in. So when somebody comes along and says something that sounds like rebellious, well, they can get themselves into some trouble.
But you see, that's how change happens, isn't it? Whether it's a bold statement like that, or it's you looking at your boss and saying, Joe, I don't appreciate you pounding on the table today. That really scares me. And if you do it again, I'm going to have to report you. I mean, that's a small, benign example, but it's a powerful one in a sense.
Well, yeah, but see right there, I'm scared because Joe's pounding on the table.
Yep.
No, you're not.
No, you're
You're
not.
scared because you're allowing yourself to be afraid because Joe's pounding on the table. You think he's doing it to you when you're doing it to yourself. That's the paradigm shift that most people don't understand. They don't even know they have a victim blame
Hmm.
consciousness. Anytime they have a poor consequence, they have to think of, it couldn't be me, has to be something out there, and that's ego. The ego cannot take responsibility for anything that goes wrong in your life. It refuses to. So as long as you think you're that ego, you're going to blame people the rest of your life. You're going to live in fear and duality, right and wrong, good and bad. You're going to have that finger pointing at all kinds of things, the government, the environment, the school systems, the healthcare systems. That's all that stuff's bothering me. No, it's your ego bothering you. And once you learn how to get past that and you start to realize, everything is cyclical and everything is actually in perfect balance. Now
Hmm.
that's really hard for people. That's where, somebody's going to imprison me for saying the sun is round. But the point is that without yin and yang, okay, we implode. There's got to be night and day.
Yeah.
There's got to be crime, or the law enforcement people will have nothing to do. There's got to be illness, or the healthcare industry will collapse. There's got to be problems for solutions to show up. There's no such thing as a problem without a solution. They always come together spiritually and karmically. Whenever a problem appears, a solution appears at exactly the same time.
Oh,
They always go together. But we don't think that way. We
no.
think linearly, we think sequentially. So there's a problem, time has to pass for a solution. Okay? We just believe that. But when the problem shows up, by the way, I think we've talked about this, Dr.
Yeah.
Pat.
Yeah.
I think you do Wordle, you do crossword puzzles, things like that.
And
We
ping pong.
invite
Don't forget the ping pong.
and the ping pong, but we invite problems into our lives because it makes life thrilling.
Yeah.
Now we have something to do. We have purpose.
Oh my God,
What if
John,
the
I
world
can't
had no
believe
problems?
I can't believe you've been talking about this because I have my final new office here back in New Jersey and it's beautiful. I finally in here. We had to go with a lot of iterations. And I face the west, beautiful windows you can't see. But the space is peaceful. So I'm in here and I'm sitting on my little chair and I'm staring out the window. And Linda comes up, my best friend, and she sees my back and she sees me staring. And she says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." Like, and then I find myself, "Well, are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'm having a few minutes. I'm listening to the Gayatri mantra and I'm looking out the window and I'm just being in deep gratitude for this." So, like, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing going on. But here's to your point. I have never appreciated until, I don't know, maybe I'm getting older. I don't know. That's like a thing, that's an ego thing. Because last night, two really young kids told me I look 20. So, I delivered mail at Bell Labs. I was around these people. I didn't know that I was around these people. And I remember having bagels with Arno Penzias one day, Mr. Big Bang, Bell Labs Big Bang person. I just called him Mr. Bagel. Okay. I was a kid, didn't matter. But he said something to me I never forgot, John. And I was talking to him about his work and clearly didn't have an intellectual idea, but something in my soul wanted to talk to him. Really bad broken accent. And he
Hmm.
looked at me and he said, "You have to remember one thing in life. Without the dark, there could be no light." Now, I'm not, I still ponder that question. I don't even understand why those words came from that man at that point in time. But those words hit me at a place in my life where I was not okay with myself, John.
Hmm.
Everything seemed dark. And I thought, and then of course he went on to tell me about satellites, and he just lost me. But the idea of that, I mean, he did. He really, he went on to talk about the Big Bang thing. But that idea, and I
Yeah,
still ask myself, is that true, John?
I don't think it is.
That's
See
why I
what?
say to myself, is that's what I'm saying. I pondered this, but just one word from that man, 1969, has me today pondering that insight.
Yeah, I'd flip it on its head. That's why I say I don't agree,
That's why I'm
because
on the
there
show with
is,
you.
yeah, it all starts with light.
Yeah.
Everything in the universe is photons. That's science, and light particles. Okay, if you go right down to the most quantum level of our own bodies, you've got cells, and inside cells you got molecules, and inside molecules you have atoms, and inside atoms you have photons, all right, light particles. So when you start to think about there's only light, then what is darkness? It's our resistance to the light. It's We create our own darkness. Now, and when it gets dark out at night, okay, you look outside and it's dark. Why? In our case, on Earth, it's because the Earth is blocking the sun. It's there's light, and then there's the absence of light. So it doesn't start with dark, and then we turn on a light. It's just the opposite. We're light beings, spiritual beings, all right, energy beings. And when we resist the light that gives us life, we start getting in our own way, and our consequences, with that mindset, that set of beliefs, our consequences are dark. We feel dark about relationships we're in. We feel dark about the career we're in. We feel dark about who knows our bodies,
Yeah.
right? We go through and like we're just beating ourselves up. And so it comes back to choice. And I will say this very clearly. If we're not feeling joy in whatever we're doing
Mm,
on a day-to-day basis, it boils down to choice. So if we're in a job that's miserable, we just, yeah, I got to go to work again today. Maybe I can come up with an excuse to not go.
been
Quit.
there.
Get another job. Because the thing is if we realize that we all have gifts and our purpose in life is to give away our gifts,
Hmm.
and when we do that, we feel joyful. We can't wait to get up in the morning and do our thing. All right. Doesn't matter what it is. If you find people who are really joyful in their careers, it's because they're doing whatever it is they love to do. It's like their essence. People who are joyful in their relationships, it's because the relation 1 plus 1 is something greater than two. There's a synergy. Okay. We help one another become better people, and
Hmm.
we educate and learn from one another. It's rich. We enrich one another. Now we both know people who all they do is bicker all day.
All day.
It's just
All
like
day.
it's just friction, and you can feel the energy. Now, in my case, I don't want to be around those people. I just don't. I mean, I can tolerate it and listen and pray and empathize and be as compassionate as possible. But if anybody's feeling like certain environments, whether it's people or it's a job or it could even be a geography, you're in this place, doesn't feel good to me,
Hmm.
move, find a way out. I mean, Dr. Pat, I remember when I was just out of college and I thought I did not, I thought I did everything wrong after a while because I had
Mm.
a degree from Notre Dame, a corporate job in finance in Chicago for the largest printing company in the world. And I felt trapped. I felt
Yeah.
miserable. I'm just like, man, I made a mistake. I majored in the wrong degree. I'm following all the rules. I'm doing the 40 plus hours work weeks. I'm wearing a suit and a tie, and I think and I just don't feel good. I feel bored. I just feel like, what am I going to do? That was a consequence. All right. And it was a consequence of my choices in terms of college and degree and all that. And I didn't like the consequence at that point. So now what do you do? Do you start blaming my boss is difficult, this company is the problem, or do you take ownership and say, I need to make a different choice?
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to, and in that case, I chose a different company, a different job, a different career. I didn't even go back into finance. I changed a different location, a different state,
Yeah.
and I even threw in a marriage. All right. And not all those choices turned out to be ideal necessarily. So now what do? You pivot. And sometimes I use the metaphor of a GPS system. All right. And your GPS system, as you know, when you're in your car, if you take a wrong turn, okay, or there's some, as long as you know where you're going, okay, it'll reroute you, right? So as we go through life metaphorically, and we know what we want, we know what our gifts are, what our purpose is, what our mission and our vision is, and this is so important. Vision is so important. And we evaluate the story we're telling ourselves. And you and I've talked about the I ams before. And anytime somebody says, and you listen to people, I'm so stressed, that story they're telling themselves is bringing more stress.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
law of attraction. I am so confused. I'm so conflicted. I'm so angry about the way things are in the world today. You're drawing more of the same. So the choices you're making, I'm
Hmm.
angry. You're choosing to be. I'm stressed. You're choosing to be. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm stressed because of that boss slamming the table. I'm stressed because the company I'm working for doesn't understand or appreciate me. I'm stressed because my spouse is negligent or not paying enough attention to me. Or no, the most important input to successful outputs.
Yeah.
So, we talked about GPS, your guidance system. I use the term also your emotional guidance system,
Oh
EGS.
boy.
Now, people say, what is that all about? Well, your emotional guidance system is always telling you something about your choices. So if my emotional guidance system is telling me I'm angry, I'm feeling I'm feeling angry, and I ask, why am I feeling angry? Okay, it's the answer is because you're not in alignment with your true self, your true capital S self. You're listening to the ego, okay? Because your true self can't be angry.
Hmm.
So anytime you're angry, your EGS is telling you you're not aligned with your source, with whatever you choose to call God, okay? Source energy. You're not, you're resisting the light. You're resisting the light. So when you start thinking about every one of us is designed and intended and created to be joyful, happy, helpful people, okay? And we're all connected. And so if we're not feeling joyful and happy and helpful and connected, it's because we're attached to a false self, to the ego. And then when we're attached to the ego, we are living in fear. We're living in duality.
Hmm.
We're living in a sequential way, not understanding that what goes around comes around. So another important karmic law, part of karmic law
Yeah.
is the more we put out, the more we get back. So what are we putting out there energetically? This is key. If I'm putting out unconditional love, I'm unconditional love. The ego doesn't get that. If I'm putting out unconditional love, love is returning to me. And the more I give, the more I feel, the
Yeah.
more I have. That's a beautiful way to live. The more joy I can give,
Hmm.
the more joy I feel. Okay. The more I forgive, the ego doesn't get forgiveness either. The ego thinks, well, you were wrong and I was right, but okay, I'll forgive you, or but I'll never forget. I'll, forgive but not forget. That's condemnation. That's not forgiveness. So the more I truly forgive, as if it never happened, it's over. Forgive and forget. It's over. Never. The more we put out that way, essentially, we're redefining our own story.
Mm.
All right. The more peace we bring into the world, the more peace we feel. It's the same world everybody else is living in, so to speak. All right. But you and I've talked about this too. If you were to describe the world in just a few words, what would you use? And the words you choose are the feelings you have going on internally.
Yeah.
So if you go again, if you listen to your emotional guidance system and it's telling you, well, the world's conflicted, the world's a mess, it's all effed up, it's crazy. How can you not see that? How can you not see how messed up it is? That's the majority of people blaming the world for their unhappiness, for their lack of peace, if you will, lack of joy. They're blaming the world, and as long as that's going on in their minds, and their belief
Yeah.
system. You think something long enough, it becomes a belief. Beliefs then become habits. And what fires together, wires together neurologically. Now, they can't see a peaceful world. They just can't see it. So the world is essentially, I like the term cosmic mirror. Whatever we see in the world is a reflection of what we have going on internally. Again, that's karmic law. So if you see anything that's just terribly disturbing, and it's happening every day, and it's you turn on the news, of course, right? You see that, and that's disturbing you, okay? It's the ego. You're letting the ego control you. And it isn't that there's not horrible things going on in the world. It's that when you take on that vibration, that frequency energetically, you take that on, you're not helping anybody, but you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
You're
You
not
know,
worrying about something doesn't help.
this is really, I mean, this is popping up every day in families, but what we're talking about today is extremely important, especially in the world of business right now. You and I both have been at the end, I'm sure, I've been at the end of a table in a boardroom and doing what some of us in the consulting field, which I don't do anymore, I don't consult anymore, business consult anymore in that way, root cause analysis. Looking at that and understanding, why are we doing root cause analysis? We're going to talk about this when we come back from break. How does X, Y, and anything perhaps in between, how does it get us to a state that truly is that play? Now, look, I prepare for these shows, John, and Tuesday nights before the show I go play, and that's my happy space. And last night, this gentleman who knows that I do the show, and he just walks up to me, and I'm in my happy moment, and I thought about you, I saw your face. And he just starts about the presidency, Iran. I mean, he just, and I just looked at him because I wasn't responding. And he said to me, "Don't you watch the news?" And I said, "Whatever I do or don't is immaterial to where I am right now. Right now, I'm at a place where I want to play.
Yeah, one of the
I
things
don't
I just
bring it here." And I
we're going
had
to
to
talk
walk
about.
away. I mean, I had the choice to stay there and have a thing with him. And I said, "No, this is not my." So I walk away and I go do my happy thing. And he's talking to like five other people. And, I put on my earbuds. But what is the point of what we're talking about? Cause and
Well,
effect is important.
here's the thing: when you believe in the karmic law, which is universal law, whether you believe it or not, it still exists. It's law. You don't worry about what other people say or do because they're going to pay for that. Okay, all debts get paid karmically. Now, they might not get paid immediately. And you also have to be careful with karmic law because it's like if I give you something, let's just say I give you a bunch of money,
Yeah.
now you owe me back. Okay. That's not how it works. I give it and it comes back, but not necessarily from you. So when you trust it and you don't give to get, that's critical because that unwinds the whole goodness, if you will, of karmic law. You give because you want to benefit the world in some way, and it returns. So this guy that's, trying to get in your face or whatever, you made a choice to walk away. That's certainly
I
one
did.
choice. I would probably do something before walking away, which is ask some questions. I would not use statements. This is key, and this is an important leadership thing. I use much more of a Socratic pull method than push and and debate. Let's have let's fight over this. Let's debate over this. He says, "Well, don't you watch the news?" I'd say, "Why should I?" If he says, haven't you seen what's going on in Iran and what's this
Yeah.
and that?" I'd say, "So what are you doing about that?
Yeah.
What are you doing about that?" Well, I'm complaining. I'm really upset. Well, yeah, how's that solving things in Iran? It's not. So I would might ask a question like, why are you attaching your feelings to something you have no control over? Why are you doing that? Well, what do you mean? Well, that's my question. Why are you attaching your happiness, your joy, your feelings to something you have no control over? Especially something like a war, on the other side of the world. Why are you doing that? Now, I am not fighting him. I'm not telling him a
Hmm.
should or shouldn't. You shouldn't. You should turn the TV off. No, I'm using questions. I'm using thoughtful questions to educate and maybe even enlighten people because they go, wow, why am I doing that? Why am I letting external circumstances stress me out? Because the only one who suffers from that is me.
Yeah.
All right. Stress breaks down the hormonal system. It breaks down the immune system. It ages us faster. We've talked about this before. It's chronic stress is just simply not a healthy thing.
Ugh.
And so the more we attach our feelings, this is our emotional guidance system. If our emotional guidance system is, I mean, way, whoa, whoa, we need to think, like you mentioned, root cause analysis. Why is that? It's because I'm attaching my feelings that I have control over to something I have no control over.
Exactly.
What?
Well, I'll
What?
tell you, on another day with this gentleman who I see every Tuesday, on another day, I will try that. Uh, I think for me on that moment, honestly, I was just like, what? Yeah, I was shocked by the conversation. And so for me, I'm learning how I feel about that conversation. But in that moment, I'm telling you, John, I had to just get away. I needed to get
Mhm.
ready for my match and beat the other guy and not be thinking about that. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, this is a really important conversation we're going to have when we come back because you're probably asking yourself the question, but this is an important one, is how does all of this we're talking about, how does that beautiful application of Y and X, how can you apply that, one, in your business, especially those of you that are entrepreneurs, right? Where you're managing your business, but more importantly, your personal life. What John just demonstrated is a personal interaction, right? But how does this change not just the dynamic of how you go through your day, but get you from where you are to where you really want to go? John, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk more about this. And how do people find out more about you, John? Let's make sure we give them your website.
Sure. My website is johnjmurphy.org. and you'll see me. I've got a couple of different podcasts on YouTube, and it's uh, John J. Murphy author on YouTube, and LinkedIn, John J. Murphy Mystic.
Okay.
So, and I hang out on LinkedIn a lot, so people can
Okay.
message me there.
I love that. I love LinkedIn. Let's take a short break. When we come back, John's going to share the actual pathway and why this is so important while you all think about the chicken and the egg. We'll be right back.
Have you ever faced a situation where you weren't quite sure how to handle it with poise, confidence, and grace? Of course you have. We all have. Well, tune into the Change Mastery Show with me, John J. Murphy. Together, my co-host, Dr. Pat, and I will introduce you to a different way to think about change. Not as something to fear or resist, but as a gift. Join us the second Wednesday of every month at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. Subscribe, share, and start your journey to mastery at johnjmurphy.org.
Are you ready to break free from blocks and trauma and step into true healing? Michelle Sinclair is a divine healer and spiritual teacher, guiding others through subconscious soul healing and the power of universal love. Her teachings, inspired by the Christ letters, reveal the vibrational impact of our thoughts, words, and actions, unlocking the key to transformation. Discover the divine laws of faith, cause and effect, and how they shape your reality. Begin your journey today at therealhealinginstitute.com. Hello, I'm Michelle, creator of the Real Healing Institute. I want to personally invite you to experience what I call subconscious soul healing. My work is about going deeper than the surface, finding the very beginning of what has been holding you back and healing it at the root. In our sessions together, which I hold over Zoom, you'll be gently and compassionately guided through a process that allows your mind and body to release what's been weighing you down. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, past trauma, fears, or even physical pain, this process can bring resolution in a way that feels natural and freeing. Many of my clients say they leave feeling lighter, more peaceful, and with a new understanding of themselves. You deserve that kind of healing. You deserve to feel better. And I would be honored to hold that space for you. You can book a session with me at therealhealinginstitute.com.
We are all born with gifts that we are meant to use to improve the world. Join me, Vicki Todd, and Dr. Pat on Shine Delusion Shine, the radical art of dreaming beyond boundaries, each fourth Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. Shine Delusion Shine is a springboard to believing, dreaming, and thinking beyond the ordinary and a catalyst to living a more fulfilling, destiny-driven life. For more information, visit vickiworldart.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I want to tell you, for those of you just tuning in, just to remind you, this is the Change Mastery Show with John J. Murphy and me, Dr. Pat. Today, we're talking about choice and consequence, the power of understanding karmic law. And we've talked about a lot of things already, John, and, happen to have a few real personal situations. But there's a way to look at this that a lot of people, when you see what you're about to present, they could see the pathway. And sometimes people need to see a pathway. So let's talk a minute about what that model looks like and what the most critical input is.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm going to share this model real quick. It's a tool I use in business. Let's pull this up. It's right here.
Yeah.
No substitute for knowledge. So it's called an IPO diagram, an input process output diagram. This is something we use in business, but I also teach people to use it on their own lives. I use it on mine. And at the bottom, you can see the transfer function, that Y is a function of X. So what does that mean? It means the outputs we get in life, and personally and in business, are a function of the inputs. Think of it like, planting a garden. You plant the seeds. The seed would be an important input, right? The type of plant you want, that type of seed. But you also require, let's say, sunlight, a water, time to grow, the whole nurturing process, and you get an output. So, what we ask is like, well, what kind of seeds are we sowing in life? Because this is even biblical. We reap what we sow. So when we take responsibility for what we're reaping, and I like to challenge people, there's always more than one output. So in business, if the only output you focus on, let's just say, is quality, you're going to end up messing up a bunch of other stuff because to get perfect quality, now it might take longer, it might cost more. The customer might not feel good about that. It's taken too long and it's cost too much. So it's always about balance. And in our case, if we're trying to get in better shape physically, all right, and we put all this time and effort into that, we could actually be messing up a bunch of other stuff in our lives, our relationships, okay, our job even, we're spending too much time at the gym or something like that. So it's always important to look at the outputs more holistically. And if there's anything undesirable on that output side, anything that's just I don't like the shape I'm in physically. I've got a whole lot of stress in my life. I don't feel like I'm being appreciated well enough at work. Or I've got financial challenges going on right now. Anything on the output side, knowledge is understanding the relationship between the X's and Y's. So we have to take responsibility for that. And if we're saying, well, I'm this way because of some factors I have no control over, you just took on the mindset of a victim, a mindset of lack and scarcity and pity. That's not going to solve anything. If you're angry about what's going on, like this guy was approached you, at your ping pong match, and you take that on, you're taking on something you have control over. But with karmic law, he's going to pay for that. So let him believe whatever he wants. All right. He's trying to impose his beliefs on you, and you have the power to say, well, I choose to think differently. I don't agree with that. Now, the ego on his part, and maybe your ego is going to get into this, attack and defend mode, because that's how the ego behaves. So by taking ownership for this, we go back over to the input side. And we say, well, all right, what changes can I make on the input side to harvest a better garden, harvest a better life? And there are critical inputs over here that you really want to pay attention to. Everything from in a physical way, the nutrition, the nourishment you're getting physically, the environment you're in. Maybe you're in a toxic environment, and that's just not your fish out of water, so to speak. It could be your career. So you have a job and you're just trying to make ends meet, but you hate what you're doing. That's no way to live. So in fact, Dr. Pat, I had and I'll stop sharing at this point.
Okay.
Just so people could get the picture. Um, but let me just pull this back up.
But part of this, this is, I think, what we miss about this, Sean. I think what we miss is the interconnectivity, right? And the way that you're describing it is, if we are not aware of what we're talking about today, then we get stuck in the victim mode. And it could be as bad as everything. My car broke down, my dog died, my my brother's not talking to me. It's almost like a water slide that you cannot stop because you don't know. You're not aware. And what you're talking about is making people aware so that you realize you have a choice.
Yeah, well, of course we do. And in fact, I'm reminded of I just last week had a guest on my Fearless podcast, and his name is Renee Godefroy. And Renee grew up in a small village in Haiti, no water, no electricity, all kinds of disease, and was not expected to live long at all. Fast forward, he ran across an intuitive growing up as a kid, and she said, "You're going to do great things one day. You're going to travel the world, and you're going to give inspirational speeches." He's like, "What?" Anyway, that's exactly what he's doing now. He came to the States at 21 years old. He had $5, a t-shirt, and couldn't speak a word of English. And but he had a vision, and that's so important. And his vision was, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to help people get out of their own way, so to speak. So what does he do? He gets creative. All right. He takes his money and he gets a couple of used rags at a Goodwill, and he goes to the dollar store and buys some soap, and he goes to a bank and starts washing cars in the parking lot and getting turned down repeatedly by people until one guy says, "Yeah, I'll let you wash my car." And he does. He says, "I did a spectacular job." So he was putting in quality input. So when you think about this, on the input side, he's putting in creativity, all right, determination. He's got vision. He's got resilience. He's got fortitude. Now, these are inputs you might not be thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, but if you want to be successful in life, it starts with mindset and determination and vision. What do I want? And then what am I willing to do to accomplish that? And again, I've said this before, what you want has to be selfless, not selfish. If what you want is about getting, that's ego. But if what you want is to give the world something better, because karmically that's going to return to you. So if I can help millions of people will help me,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of a thing. So what does Renee do? He starts mopping floors as a janitor. It's funny. He said the first two words I ever learned were same thing. It's like, what's that all about? He goes, because I'd go to McDonald's to get something to eat. I didn't know I couldn't read the menu. I didn't know I couldn't speak English. So I'd get up behind somebody and they'd step aside and he'd just say, same thing. So he's like, I'm eating all kinds of stuff. But anyway, my point is, anybody who's thinking like, I got it tough, Murphy, you don't understand my situation. Yeah, I didn't grow up in Haiti without electricity and plumbing, um, but we've all had our setbacks in life. I was told when I was 17 I could never play football again, which was one of my dreams. And I was told by a world-renowned surgeon who'd operated on my foot twice after running it through a lawnmower. Okay, foolish me. But here's the thing, Dr. Pat, if I would have believed
Yeah.
that surgeon, and I would have gone through life going, John, you're such a jerk. You're so stupid. Well, how could you do that? How could you be so foolish and careless? Who knows what I'd be doing to this day? But I didn't adopt that victim mindset, Dr. Pat. My grandfather gave me a book on courage. I read a story about Rocky Blyer, who had destroyed his
Yeah.
foot in Vietnam. You know that maybe you know the story. Long story
Yeah.
short, a couple of years later, I'm playing for the same university that Rocky played for, which is the University of Notre Dame. That shift in mindset, and I use the term mind over matter. The mind is powerful. So when we mind our mind, we mind the gap, so to speak, between stimulus and response. There's always multiple ways to respond to any stimulus. In your case, this guy comes up and he's getting in your face about, the state of affairs in the world today, and this, that's a stimulus. Now you responded by saying, I'm not going to listen to this, and you walk away. That's that's peaceful, and you have the strength to do that. Another response would be to engage with this guy and get into some lose-lose debate, right?
Totally lose
Other
lose.
yeah, other response would be to just toy with it a little bit with questions. Maybe you'll get him to think differently, maybe, but you don't expect that. You just I consider myself an educator, so whenever I get a chance to just challenge somebody without debate, without pushing, just questions. It's very Socratic, right? Just pull. Sometimes people go, wow, I never really thought about it like that. Huh? Or they don't even respond right away, but they go home and they think about it. And, in my case, weeks, sometimes months later, a CEO or somebody will call me up going, you said something that really got me thinking. And I'm like, well, good. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, it's like Arno Penzias telling me, like, how many gazillion years ago, there's no light without the dark. And me spending, I mean, whatever your truth is about that, it was enough to get me to think, is that true? Right. And clearly, who you're looking at today, this is not like, I mean, I could have a conversation with you about it today, but it's always been in my mind. That statement's always been in my mind with a question mark. And I love that about him. I love that he did that. But it takes a
Yeah.
lifetime for you to decide and understand you have the freedom to choose.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, and what I do like and appreciate about the comment with light and dark is that you can't know one without the other.
The other.
That's contrast, right?
Yeah.
And that's so important. You can't know peace without conflict. You can't know light without dark. You can't know day without night. You can't know anything without what appears to be its opposite. That's contrast. So when you start to look at the world as in balance, it's in perfect harmony, and it's always self-correcting, so to speak,
Hmm.
then we talked about this on a prior episode, two
Yeah,
sides to the same coin. What side do you want to put your attention on? The problem or the solution?
exactly. Exactly. And that has been a lifelong lesson for me.
Yep.
I'm a work in progress, John. I will tell you that. My solution to the problem was drink and use drugs for a long time in my life. And then it wasn't a solution anymore. And I had to learn everything all over again. And I'm very
Well,
grateful for that.
yeah, Dr. Pat, it's a good illustration too of how often people are trying to solve their symptoms, their outputs, and the transfer function. It's the whys with approaches like drugs, alcohol. We're putting band-aids on things, but we're not really getting to root cause. We even do it in our medical system, our healthcare system. We're patching things up without really understanding root cause. And I mean, that's not a criticism. It's just an observation because often we don't have the knowledge to solve a lot of these. We don't know how yet to solve certain diseases, to eliminate them,
Yeah.
just eradicate them. We don't, so we have to try something and experiment and learn as we go. Um, but so often people are trying to fix the outputs without doing the real work to get to the inputs. And in many cases, they're not even aware that they're the cause of the problem. They're the cause of their own problems karmically. That because they choose to think certain ways and
Mm.
believe certain things, limiting beliefs, for
Hmm.
example, their outputs in life are limiting. It can be no other way, to quote Einstein. Okay. And so that's huge. And
It
you've heard me
is.
quote Einstein before.
Oh,
Einstein said,
yeah.
everything is energy. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way, he said. This is not philosophy, it's physics. Match the frequency of the reality you want. So let's just say the reality you want is a fit, energetic body, the most awesome relationships with the people you're around, a job that just turns you on from day to night. You just absolutely love what you're doing. Your life is full of joy.
Mm.
Those outputs have frequencies. And if you can learn to match them, you will get that. You will become that. There can be no other way, to quote Einstein. Problem is, right away, people go, I don't believe that. That's okay. You don't have to believe it. But guess what? You're going to just keep getting the same outputs. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
That's
uh,
definition of insanity, isn't it?
Yeah, I
John,
think Einstein
doing
is.
the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. John, what a great show. I so appreciate this. Thank you so much. And since you brought up the health system, I can't wait till we do a show on that. Again, let people know how they can find out more about you. And thank you for this beautiful reminder of the power of choice and how that is a freedom.
That's right. Just examine your choices, take inventory, and take inventory of both the X's and the Y's. Um, if you're not, if you're baking an apple pie and the apple pie isn't tasting like it's supposed to be, okay, go back and look at the ingredients, look at the oven temperature, look at the amount of time it's in the oven, look at the critical inputs, because if you get those in order, you're going to get a very nice, tasty, predictable output. Okay, it can be no other way. So that's the tool. And you could use that metaphor for life, both in business and in your personal life. JohnJMurphy.org is my website. From there, you can see my YouTube channels. I've got hundreds
Yeah.
of videos available. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and we'll see you next month, Dr. Pat. We'll have another
Yeah.
great show.
Yeah, this one I gotta go back and listen to a bunch of times though, right there. I got some insight. Thank you, John. And thanks to all of you out there. And remember, all of us at some point in time in our lives, yes, we have mistaken salt for sugar and put it in our apple pie and then tried to serve it. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you for listening to the Change Mastery Show with John J. Murphy, an opportunity to uncover, explore, and experience the path of transformation and illumination. Join Dr. Pat and me on the second Wednesday of every month at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. Never miss an episode. Subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Connect with me on social media. And for questions, comments, or to explore my books and services, visit johnjmurphy.org. Until next time, be the change you want to see in the world.